All right, Mr. Mark Imperial, how you doing? This is Richard Graves of the History House Show.
Hey, Richard, great to see you.
How are you doing, Mark? It's good to see you. I see your studio is a little bit more professional than mine. So,
are you kidding? No, great to see you. I mean, besides like Facebook chat and stuff like that, I think I haven't had a conversation with you or heard your voice in probably over 30 years, man.
Damn, man,
it's great to catch up with you.
Making me feel old. Yeah, it's been a minute. Yeah, you're right, man. So, first of all, let me let everybody know Mark Imperial is probably one of the foundational people of house music in Chicago. He had the label House Nation Records early on. I think we were all teenagers at the time. And Mark, I remember meeting Mark shortly after he released J'adore Dancer, and I believe that was on DJ National Records. Can you talk to everyone a bit and tell them how you even got into house music to begin with, what your background is and everything?
Yeah, well, making me think back now. That J'adore was 1985. So how old were we then? You know,
I think we were like 14 or 15, man.
Yeah. I couldn't even drive myself to the recording studio to record that. My dad would drive me, so that was crazy. No, back in the day, like this perspective. I'm from the suburbs of Chicago, so I'm not like a downtown Chicago house music guy, you know. Mm-hmm. So my perspective of the scene back in the day was typically the teen clubs. Like you're from you're Aurora, yeah. So I was Downers Grove, Aurora. So my scene was the suburbs, you know. Our highlight was Sunday nights at Dilligat's in Addison, Illinois, the teen club. And even and before that, I was on roller skates, man, at Westmont Roller Rink, and listening to Fast Freddy DJing and that. And from the roller rink to Dilligat's, the teen club. Mm-hmm. So getting into house music for me was just an evolution of what we were doing. Because like I DJ'd for whatever reason. I think it was, you know, we were all listening to WBMX at the time, right?
Yes, we were.
So WBMX, the hot lunch mixes, and that was like the highlight of the day. Wanted to, you know, spin those tracks myself. So I did what everybody else would do. I called up the station, and I remember calling the station to find out what kind of a mixer I should get. And you know who answers the phone? They put me on the phone. I called WBMX at lunch, and they put me on the phone with Mickey Mix and Oliver. I'm like, what? Wow. I'm talking to Mickey Mix and Oliver, and he's telling me to get mixers like Newmark and go to Midwest Stereo in the city. I'm like, I don't have a car, so I called my friend Doug. My friend Doug drives me to the city. We go get this mixer. I had the mixer with it didn't have a fader, like a crossfader. It had knobs. So
you had the knobs.
So I was like spinning like this. Remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
So you know, I did what everybody else did. I got the mixer, I got the equipment, and I started to DJ in my bedroom. So DJing in my bedroom until I got good enough to be like, okay, let's go to these teen clubs. So I'm hanging out at the teen clubs. Finally, like approached Julian Jumpin' Perez, who at the time, you know, he had what we call residency now.
Dilligat's.
Yeah, residency. Back then it was just like, he spins at Dilligat's. I was like, hey man, you know, whatever. And you know, he invites me to spin when nobody's there, warm up the crowd, play the slow song so he could take a break, you know. So I did my time, you know. I did that, and then eventually worked my way to be able to play a few sets during the night. Next thing you know, house music is exploding in the area, and I did the next natural thing. I said, man, I want to make one of those tracks. So I started to explore the equipment, the drum machines. A friend of mine, Ralphie, the Raz Rosario, of course, my first record, Jadore, was with Ralphie. So I showed him what I was working on in the bedroom. He's like, that's a great track. Let's go finish that track. So he helped me co-produce Jadore. And then sort of the rest is history. So that was like circa 1985, man.
Yeah, I remember back then, shoot, I had just started doing parties also. We did parties on the Royal. We would go to Dillagas, or we go out to Main Street, the skating rink out in Downers Grove. And we did our thing. And then, like I said, I got to meet Benji early on. And that's how I got your record. And that's what they told me who you were. I thought it was an import. I said, this got to be an import. And Benji's like, nah, man, this guy, he's from Downers Grove. You should know this guy. I said, who? He said, Mark Imperial. I said, Mark Imperial? I said, okay. And I asked Julian. He said, yeah, he's at Dillagas. So, and then that's when we found out, we were very proud of you because, everything else before that, pretty much, I think you were the first one out our way to make a record because Hitman didn't make hit tracks, I think, until like 87, the first hit tracks. And I think he might have done some stuff. He might have did a remix for DJ Pierre before then, but the first person from out here that really got on was you. So we were like proud of you, man. So
I appreciate it. Yeah. And that my influence was all those Italo disco records that we were listening to back in the day, all the imports and stuff. That's what I listened to. So of course I mimicked that sound, and that's what came out.
Wow, man. And after that, I remember you made Jadore, and then we come out. What was out here? We come out. I think you guys were doing parties. No, the guys at Bolingbrook doing parties out and about, and I think you guys were doing parties like at an Elks Club out here in Downers Grove or something. And we come out, because it's. We're from Aurora, so we want to. There's different girls out here, so we come out and hang out. And I remember you started your label, House Nation Records. And I remember Jason's Revenge when it came out. Now, how did Jason? Everybody. That's that one is Jason's watching. Everybody. We all freaked out. We heard that, man. I mean,
I still remember the first time hearing it on the radio, and I think it was Ralphie, my friend, played it the first time on WBMX during the hot mixes, and that was an accomplishment, man. Like I was so proud to hear that, like in the hot mixes. But yeah. No Name, the group No Name, I was introduced to them by a friend of mine, Greg, who had been producing music with me, and we did some freestyle tracks and that. And it was a cousin of his, Juan, that was working with the group No Name. And they brought the track with me, to me. And it was, it was just an idea, a concept at the time. And as a producer, producing the record, the producer's role is to come up with the sound. Like, what's the sound going to be? So I said, you know what? I had tracks I was playing with in the bedroom, of course. So I had the 909 with that famous tom track that we used on it. Yeah, boom, ba-doom, boom, ba-doom, ba-doom, boom. Like that was literally a tom track that I was just messing with on the 909. And then at the time, if you recall, here's a little insider secret. People may not have recognized this, but remember the import track. I'm going to botch the name. It's like Liaisons Dangereuses.
Oh, yeah. Liaisons Dangereuses.
Yeah, Los Niños y Los Niñas. And the other track with that hard snare drum.
Right.
What I did was I just sampled that hard snare drum and we threw it into Jason's Revenge.
So that's how they did that.
Yeah, if you ever wonder where that came from, it was that. And it was a crazy, insane way we did that, because back in the day, that was 1985, 1986. So to make that happen was insanely difficult. It wasn't like today, you just sample it, stick it on a little timeline on the thing, and you're done. Back then, man, do you want to know how that's done back then?
Yeah, please tell me.
So I had the oldest sampler ever made. It was like the Akai, what model was that? It was an 8-bit sampler. Thing was about the size of a microwave oven.
Wow. And
it held like 6 seconds of a sample, but it was a huge thing. And then the sound would you'd save the sound on a disc. So I literally saved the sound, that snare drum from the record, on that Akai S612. And now to get it on the track, you have to have it play like, you know, psh, 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 like a snare drum.
Mm-hmm.
So we used a Roland single line sequencer,
Oh,
an MSQ.
I remember those.
Okay, if you remember that little box, a little
Mm-hmm.
MSQ recorder, and usually you're sequencing keyboard lines or whatever. I'm sequencing a snare drum through a whole song. Okay. Yeah. What makes it worse is that when you have to bring that to the studio, you have to take that thing, that sequence that you made for an entire song, the 6-minute song or whatever, and you have to save it somewhere. There was no floppy disk or anything at the time in the 80s, or none of that in that MSQ. You had to save it using a tape recorder, like a cassette recorder.
Oh, yeah. Yep,
so we would link that thing up to a cassette recorder, and it would make all the noises, all that stuff, and it would record this thing on a cassette, and we would carry the cassette recorder to the studio with the MSQ, and we'd be like, shit, gotta load up the snare. and so you would literally, each line at a time, we would load up the snare sequence, and we'd record a pass on the 24 track. Then we're like, okay, gotta do the bass line. You would take that cassette recorder, we would load up the bass line. Literally, it was one track at a time from this MSQ 100. It's so funny to think about it now. But we did some work back then.
That is, when I talked to Man Parrish, and, it's like looking at how technology moves. When I talked to him and they did Boogie Down Bronx, and him and Raul Rodriguez, he told me how when they used to record, that was before they had MIDI. I don't even think they had Sympty yet. And he would talk about how
Sync 24.
Yeah, they would have to run it and then stop and then catch the beat and then keep running it again. And how they would measure the tape when they would cut stuff and link them together. I was like, oh my God, how did you guys do it? But even when we were doing stuff like that, compared to how the kids do it now, is grab a program, put sample here, put sample there, run it, get an MPC 1 or MPC Live or something, and that's it. They're done. It's like minutes. We had to pay for studio time and man. So wow, I did not know that, because I remember the snare. When you made Jason's Revenge, when you guys did that, you and No Name, everything about it was different than what was already out. Because at that time, that was shortly after, I think, Bring Down the Walls that came out, some of that stuff, Move Your Body, Marshall Jefferson. But when that bad boy dropped, it was so different. I remember that record dropped at the same time House Nation dropped, the Farley's House Nation. So they went together well in the mix, man. But that boom, 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 boom. We knew you could tear a party up when it would drop, and that boom, I mean, so now I know. I had no idea, because I thought, but I guess I should have thought. We had no drum machines that did that back then. We didn't have any MPCs. We didn't have even emulators back then. So that was something. Wow, that's amazing, man. So when you guys made that. I mean, what happened? I mean, your label just blew up. It had to blow up. You got to tell me.
Yeah. So when I was on DJ International from Jadore, and then I did my first track, I think that Jason's Revenge, was the first release on House Nation. I believe. Yeah. 86.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely a great freshman release. So it was a great outing for the label. And it grew in popularity pretty quickly, mostly, Chicago land. What they liked overseas and what they liked in New York, obviously, was so different. And that's another learning lesson from back in the days. I have tracks that blew up overseas that did absolutely nothing in Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. So it's amazing. Like Laurent X Machines, when I working with Vinny Devine.
Mm-hmm.
And Lonnie and those folks, when we did Laurent X Machines, it was acid house, but it was what they started to call wild pitch here. If you recall wild pitch.
Yeah.
And we did it before that term even existed, but that's what it essentially was. It was just building layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of music. it did nothing in Chicago, surprisingly. It was an acid house track, but it was definitely a little bit deeper. But if you went to Record Mirror in the UK, it hit top 3. That was like the record that launched our name and our label in the UK, and in Europe was Lauren X Machines. But if you were to think about that here, and you mentioned that around in Chicago, you probably won't get a lot of recognition from Lauren X Machines.
And what year was that when that dropped?
That was, I believe, 88. Was it 80? Yeah, I think around 88. Lauren X Machines, right around the time of Love I Lost.
Okay,
that was definitely an overseas rocker. And it was strange. All the sales were licensed, so we didn't get the bulk of the money from that because we licensed it to other labels outside, out of the country. So U.S. sales low, overseas sales great.
I guess it happened with a lot of stuff back then. Now, I was going to ask you, I was told, now I joined the military shortly after this record came out, and they told me you did it. I was like, I don't know who did it, but they said you did it. The New Beats to House with the sample of Kraftwerk, with the Kraftwerk, it's more fun to compute. And give me a fat do. Did you do that?
New Beats to House was a licensed record. I licensed it for House Nation here. That was a Dutch house record by Grey House, and I was probably one of the first Chicago labels to understand and learn licensing in the reverse way. Most people were licensing their music for overseas distribution. I was like one of the first people to license a record here, from overseas to release here. So people probably mistakenly give me the credit for producing the track because it was on House Nation Records.
Oh, okay.
See? But I had licensed it from a Dutch label.
From a Dutch label. So, that's the first time I've seen it go this way. I know that Streetwise used to do that with Beggar's Banquet, back with the stuff we used to break dance to, Pop Goes My Love, all that stuff by Freeze. But I don't think anybody in Chicago licensed back because they were licensing all the DJ National Track stuff over in FFNR, I believe it's label, and a few other labels overseas. I forgot, London Jacks, they were putting out all the stuff and not paying anybody for what I was told.
It was crazy. I mean, we were kids and we're learning this stuff on the fly, and all we wanted to do was meet girls, right? So we were like, what, business? I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. We're doing business too.
Exactly.
But I got to give credit to a colleague of mine in Connecticut, Rich Dittman, Hillbilly House, who introduced me to that whole concept of licensing. And he was in communication with the Dutch label, and he put that deal together for us and made it happen in the States. And I did it because it was just a great track. And I thought, and you know what, the funny thing is the only reason why is because if we went to go buy an import, I don't know, what was it, $6.99 or something?
Yeah.
And then for me to go license it, I was able to make it available to people here for $3.99. So it's like we made sales from the record. It was a great record. And, happy to take the mistaken credit for producing it. But yeah, it was just on the label. I get that all the time for that record. Go Imperial, go Imperial.
Yeah. Yeah.
That rave track.
That rave track. I was in California. They told me you had done that one, the Coa Imperial. I was like, oh, okay. And I said, well, it's possible because I knew you were talented enough to do it. So it wasn't like it was improbable. I was like, okay, he's hitting out there, So, and that's when people are like, I know that guy. No, you don't. Yes, I do. I know that. So, I remember after you did, Name did Jason's Revenge. It was Hypnotic House came out, which we all thoroughly enjoyed. It still had that nice underground feel at that time. Songs like Work the Box and Rocking Down the House. And, they all had that. That was when Chicago was going through that little phase of that little darker sound of the underground. Yeah. And then you made Rock This. I remember Rock This was on your label. And that was just a go-to record everybody played. And then, of course, the one everybody that has asked me to ask you about, all the fans of the music, the Love I Lost, with Jack in House, with Kevin Irving. How did you guys get together? What made you make that particular track?
Yeah. So the love I lost, that who knew? I didn't know that was going to be like a breakout hit or anything. Wrote the lyrics for that track in high school. Like that was
Wow.
literally just like a goofy high school poem or whatever I had written.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I think I had just gotten back from New Music Seminar in New York City when I was hanging out with Chip E and DJ International Records, and Kevin Irving was along for the ride. And there's probably pictures out there somewhere that
Mm-hmm.
that we have to confiscate. But I just recall having a conversation. I'm like, hey, man, you want to check out these lyrics I wrote? I don't know. I have an idea for a beat, and let's just see what happens. There was no rhythm to it. There was no, nothing, no cadence to the track whatsoever. Literally just put Kevin on the microphone, played a bass line that I'd been working on with a basic beat track. And then he brought that song to life, like the lyrics to it, the way that it sung. And then from the basics of that, it just evolved. I wrote the rest of the hooks, wrote a second verse to it, and it just kind of built from there. Just kind of it revealed itself, if you will, just a jam session.
Mm-hmm.
No intentionality, because a lot of my tracks, because I wasn't a singer,
Right.
And I wasn't like musically inclined. I was a DJ, but I kind of knew, as a producer, I knew sounds and I knew what made people move. So I just had a vision. A lot of my tracks early on, like Jadore, it was spoken word. It wasn't like, it was more almost rap, if you will. And my influence there was Bobby O. She Has a Way. All those tracks were my influence. So I'm like, man, I did songs like Exotic Lover, J'adore Dancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, okay, that's going to be my sound,
Mm-hmm.
But then when I brought Kevin in the studio and he sings, then it became, okay, Mark, you're going to have to sing now. So I just did background vocals on that song. He carried the leads and I did background, and layered it up, man. And it just kind of took a life of its own. And I was really surprised that it went as far as it did. Didn't expect that.
That was probably one of the biggest hits in Chicago history. I mean, that kind of came at the close when we were kind of 88, 89, BMX went off the air and stuff kind of started scooching over to New York, and their labels, Strictly Rhythm, and, they kind of took the ball from us. But that was, a lot of our guys went overseas. I think Steve Farley did. And, but that was like the pinnacle of Chicago. And it's odd, people don't like to give the suburbs any credit. I think the thing that makes us a little different than the guys in the city is that there is a Italo disco influence, and the electro we listen to as B-boys and WBMX, and be it Julian or Ralphie or Mickey or Kenny or Farley, the range of music they played, and we played for pretty mixed crowds all the time. Blacks, Latinos, Asians, whites. So we played kind of the best of all worlds, and I think they gave us a little broader. It was bigger to us than just, okay, we listened to Frankie Knuckles and we like disco, like a lot of people tried to forward that narrative. I think we had a lot of influences going. And like I said, when that record dropped, man, it was, I know Mike had, I remember Mike did one of the remixes on there, Hitman, and we would play it, and the crowd, to this day, that is one of the songs that has to be played. If you do a Chicago set, they're waiting for you to play that song, and you better play it at some point or you might get booed. So you got to play Marshall's, Move Your Body House Anthem. You got to play Steve's Jack Your Body. You got to play Farley's Funkin' with the Drums at some point, and you got to play The Love I Lost, and you got to play hit tracks. People want to hear those because those were the pinnacle of how records are being made out here, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm super proud of that, and really never expected it. And you made a great point about like the perspective in the suburbs, and I never thought about it the way you put it, but it's true. We had to really appeal to a broader audience out here, because you go to the city, and when I would go out as a teen and go to downtown to go to a club, you're hearing a lot of obscure. Maybe you're going to a new wave club. Maybe you're hearing like early Jesse De La Pena spin,
Right,
or you're at Medusa's or something, and you're hearing like straight up, new wave, like new wave. But in the suburbs, you can't get away with that all night. People will be complaining and clamor, and they want to hear a little bit of mix of everything. So we were kind of, it created a different blend out here.
Yeah,
it really was different. But that's a great point you made.
Well, yeah, it was very different. I mean, and I think Julian had a lot to do with that. We all went to Dillegas, and Julian was another one. Julian played music. Julian is one of the guys that could go play an all-black club and rock it down. He could go play in the suburbs, go play on the north side, south side, west side, all Latin club. He just had that ear about what was good, but he also would introduce the different audiences to something different, that he played the black club, he's going to play the Latin club, and like Relight My Fire or something like that, and they start, they feel that, so I think Julian had a strong influence on all of us out here, including Bill and Mike and you and guys I know myself. So I think that's what made us a little different, as far as DJing. Nothing against the Chicago DJs. I don't want a bunch of emails and messages. We know you guys are where house started, but we were out here too. I mean, we tune in the radio and get BMX. So, and we went down to the clubs down there. I remember going to like the music box and hearing Ron Hardy. When I was talking to Tyree, I told him the first time I heard Ron Hardy, I'm like, what's the big deal? Because see, we were trained, you got to be on beat, got to blend these records, got to keep it moving, play about 3 or 4 minutes in and out and make it do something. And so when I heard Ron Hardy, first I'm like, this dude's off beat. That's the first thing I come up with. This dude's off beat. What's the big deal? Then the next thing I know, he's playing Future Acid tracks, and he's got people climbing up the walls. And I'm like, what is he doing? He had that emotional control and the records he picked and how he played them. I learned a lot from watching that, because I was like, man, because, again, we were trained to be technical. We're going to be on beat like radio DJs, but it was different in Chicago. I picked up some things for those guys. But you're right. Again, like I said, out here, we had to be able to play for all crowds. And I think that made us be able to play pretty much anywhere,
Hey, I always wanted to be the guys from downtown, but I couldn't pull off that music that long without irritating people. I wanted to be that hip, like, let's play cool music nobody's ever heard all night. And you mentioned Ron Hardy. My first experience with Ron was through my colleagues Vinny Devine and Demetrius, my producing colleagues.
Now I'm gonna drop my camera for a minute, but you'll still be on. So please continue that story, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So Vinny Devine and Demetrius, they used to, when they would come to my studio and we would make tracks, we would just be up all hours of the night making tracks. They would take these tracks on cassette and they would go to the warehouse, or they would go to the factory on the west side of Chicago and downtown, places that I didn't go with them. And they would come back and tell me the feedback that they played I didn't expect it, but they'd be like, yeah, Ron played our cassette to the crowd. And I'm like, he played our cassette? And they would say, man, they lost their minds. And like you said, they were climbing up the walls to these tracks. And then that's when we were like, okay, well, let's actually release this then. So what was cool about them is they were so, they would take chances, and they were so edgy in the city. They would play tracks right off of cassette tapes just to see how they would go in the crowd. Like, we wouldn't do that out in the suburbs. I only started doing that much later, playing like unreleased tracks in my sets. But man, I thought that was so cool that they would play cassette tapes at like the factory and the warehouse.
Yeah, and I apologize, people. I had to makeshift and do some things with my phone. You're right. When the guys come out, Demetrius I met before, and they work close with Larry Hurd and Marshall and all of them. And they would tell me, I remember when I first bought Mystery of Love, I first heard Mystery of Love at the warehouse, or at the music box. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Larry had given Ron a tape of it. When I went and bought the record, I was disappointed. I'm like, what the hell? This isn't what I heard, because they would have those real raw mixes.
Yep.
And let me tell you guys something about the music box. And Ron Hardy would play. We're not saying climbing the walls figuratively here. People would literally be climbing up the speakers, climbing up poles. It would become crazy. I mean, and it's just the people were just that enamored by how he rocked the music. A lot of people talk about Frankie Knuckles being the godfather of house music. I'm gonna say this, and I'm probably gonna get the hate mail, but I'm gonna say that's Farley and Ron. Really, that's Farley, Jackmaster Funk, and Ron Hardy are the ones that really made the essence of Chicago house music as DJs beating the box. And that, no disrespect and not taking away nothing from Andre Hatchett or Lil Lewis or Steve Hurley, any of those guys, but I'm at to say it's Farley and Ron. They really were the essence of house music as far as DJs are concerned in Chicago. The things they could do were utterly amazing.
Hey, amazing folks. They're all creators in their own right. All credit to Frankie taking it to New York City and really taking it to another level. It's everybody has a platform, and as you mentioned, Farley and Ron's platforms were underground and they were big time. But everybody's got their platform and everyone's a creator. So absolutely credit to all.
And I'm glad you said that, man. A lot of times I don't know if you've seen some of the debates on Facebook or, when the guys get into it, I'm not going to mention the names of the guys get into it, but everybody who's trying to say that they were the first and it was us, and me and Benji would talk about it. And honestly, it really was a collective effort. Everybody played their part and everybody brought something to the table. When you talk about Farley or Steve Hurley or Julian Perez, or when you're talking about producers like Marshall Jefferson or Vince Lawrence or Larry Hurd or Adonis, and you're talking about us out here. You talk about you or Mike Hitman Wilson, or Bad Boy Bill even, we all made this thing move in these regions. We used to throw these parties out here. We would invite you out all the time to Aurora or Elgin or Bolingbrook. And we would bring out Hot Mix 5 guys, and we bring out, we brought the party to the suburbs, because a lot of the kids didn't get to, we got to the city a lot, but they didn't. So we would bring it out here. And I think that helped the music really solidify as a regional thing. And I think that it's no real one person you say is like, okay, yeah, he's created house, or this guy created house, or this record label. It started on the south side, started on the west side. I think everybody was really doing their thing because we all had that influence of dance music and we were all going towards the same goal, trying to do the same thing.
I always say there's an expression, the notes were already there before Mozart came along, it's like everybody just created from the same notes. You know what I mean? Everyone's a creator. They all have a platform. So there's like no need for a debate about that. Everybody contributed,
right?
And they all did their part.
The only thing I will say is no, house music did not come from New York. It comes from Chicago, people. No disrespect.
I'll be with you on that.
Yeah, no disrespect to Larry Levine and no. We know Frankie came from New York and they started the Warehouse, and that was a point in history. However, house music originates from Chicago, period. So that I'm going record to say that. I'm going to remind you about one time I came out to Bolingbrook. You guys hosted a DJ battle, West Suburban DJ battle. And I came out and I entered the battle. And I met you a couple times. You say, yeah, man, you should come in this battle. So there's two stories I got to tell about you. One was that come to the battle and Phil K. Swift and Troy Guy, they were local guys too. We were all friends. And we come to this battle, man. You had a lot of DJs. And eclectic music. I go in there and I start off with like "We're Rocking the Planet" by Hashim, and I threw everybody off like, what? And anyway, ultimately I think I placed second right after Troy. I believe I can take losing to Troy. Troy was bad. He was a cold DJ, man. Yeah, it was fun, man. You had it packed. It was packed out in there, man. There was people out the door. And I got to play for that crowd and I had fun. And, and he's like, oh, man, you're pretty great DJ. And I was like, that kind of made my year that year. It's like, Mark Imperial says I'm a good DJ.
Oh, well, I meant it then because I don't take that lightly.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome.
And then there was one time there was a party that you guys were doing over at, where Proviso West was in Proviso West was in like Hillside. and across the expressway was like a Holiday Inn or something. And this is when Bill went to Proviso, and I, I'm an old B-boy, I'm a break dancer, So when Mike brought Bill out and he was doing this thing, I'm like, I could beat that guy, I mean, I'm always thinking battle back then. I want to battle that guy because I'm like, how are they going to bring this little guy here to do all this, and he ain't hiring us or whatever. But I went over to the party and Bill was there. And I guess they got back to Bill I was talking crazy about. I was like, I want to battle this guy anywhere, anytime, blah, blah, blah. At that time, I would have did it. Right now, not so much. But back then, I was still able to get the scratching on and stuff. And I'm handing out flyers, and I'm talking to you. And I think it was a party I hired you for. We were talking. And then Bill came up and said, who's this Richard Graves guy? He talks a lot of crap, blah, blah, blah. I said, yeah, it's me, man. I said, we can battle right now. And he's like, okay, we can battle right now. He was like, you probably won't want to do that. So, you're on the radio. He's not. It might be a bad look if he happens to, beat you. It'd be pretty bad. So, so I remember that. You probably don't because you have a lot of things that happen. But I remember that, man. But you kind of see, yeah, it would be bad for you because if he actually does win, you have a lot more to lose than he does. But
we're already thinking politics back in the 80s.
Yeah, we were. But at that time, would I've got Bill at that time? Maybe. Now, not at all. No, he's not doing what he does because Bill is a bad dude. That dude. I remember when he got into the DMC battle for Chicago. That's when he had took it to him. That's when I stopped scratching, man. Him and Richie Rich made me stop scratching. When I saw DJ Richie Rich and Bad Boy Bill when they did, I think that was 88 or 89 that DMC battle. I saw both of them. And Bill whips out a dildo and scratching, and Richard Rich is doing all. I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm gonna start just blending records. Let me elevate my game, becoming a mature DJ now. All right, I'm sorry, man. Old times. But,
hey, those were great times. I'll tell you. I can't forget all those times in Aurora or in Elgin doing parties there. That was always like the highlight of the year.
Wow.
Blue Moon and
the Blue Moon
Elks Club and oh man, those were good times.
We had a lot of good stuff going on out here, man. I mean, I feel sorry for the kids today. We had a lot of fun and we got to know each other, from different towns through the music. I mean, we would go to Bolingbrook or go to Downers Grove or Oak Brook. We were all over the place, man. North, west, and south suburbs. I got to know a lot of very good DJs from different areas, man. So, and like I said, we would bring you out, everybody wanted to see you, so we put Mark, it got to the point, one time we put you on the fly, we didn't even have to get a Hot Mix 5 guy, we just put Mark Imperial on there. Oh, people know Mark Imperial's going, everybody came, so.
Oh, that's fun. And I remember before I would come out to your shows, we would spend the whole day, Demetrius would come over and I'd be like, okay, let's do an unreleased track. So we would be in the studio beating a brand new unheard track just so that I could bring it on a 4-track and play. During my set, so people would get to hear something they never heard before. So that was always fun.
Yeah, and you always brought it, man. You always came. Your mixes were always good, man. You always had some new music. I remember one time, the song "Grooving Without a Doubt" that was on KMS that Kevin Saunderson who did Inner City. So
I love that label. Yep.
You came out one time, and that was one of those records that if you missed it, you didn't own it. So I never had a copy of that record. So I was like, damn, that was like one of the staples. We had to have it. You came out, I think you had a remix of it or something that they did in 88. And you rocked the hell out this remix. I'm like, Mark, you got to give me that record. You're like, I'm not giving you this record.
Wait, where am I going to get a record?
You're like, I'm like, come on, man. He's like, nope, sorry.
I'm like the only one that exists.
Oh, man. So, like I said, you'd always come out. We had a good time, man. And everybody respected you, bro. And like I said, all the guys in the suburbs are just proud of you for having your label and pushing the line and making some incredibly good music. I mean, the music you made, I don't think you made one record that I did not think was good. And that's saying a lot.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you were very consistent with it, man. So what did you do after Love I Lost came out? I know you did the Lauren X stuff. What else did you guys do?
Yeah, so after Love I Lost and Lauren X, I mean, when music started evolving, it changed the whole marketplace, as you saw. House music wasn't the focus anymore. The attention went elsewhere. The attention went to the rave scene, frankly, if you recall that. So, we tried a few tracks back in the day, like Free Mike Tyson. That did okay. But the music kind of went, it evolved from house music into rave. So
right.
that's just kind of where it went. And if you stuck around with house music, you weren't getting heard. So that like, it's only come back around most recently. And it's like, okay, now we're done with all the trends. We're back to like the basics and the club music and the house music. So yeah, I went through revolutions of stuff. You know, I was still DJing the clubs at the time. I think after Love I Lost and that, I started working for Walter Payton's companies out here. So that's when I was DJing at America's Bar, Pacific Club, the Big Kahuna, 34s in Schaumburg. So just DJing clubs and just dabbling in music at that point. Did a couple of rave tracks and helped a couple other folks, but that was about it. Not much in the producing front or on the label side at all. Ever since the heyday of the house music and Chicago music in the 80s.
Yeah, I think that's the last time I saw you. When I came home on leave, I was a Marine. I think I might have been in uniform. I don't remember. But at 34s, I went to Walter Payton's club, and I think I spoke to you, were DJing. You're like, "Hey, man, good to see you," and all that stuff. And after that, man, everybody started doing life, you know. And then,
that would have been 1994 or 1995.
Yeah. That's a long time ago.
Yes.
Don't remind me how old we've gotten, man.
Think about it. Yeah, because I was at Big Kahuna in 1990, and then at 34s till they closed. So that was like 94.
Yeah.
95.
Wow. Time flies, man.
Yep.
But what else was I going to ask you? People wanted me to ask you about the people you work with, Demetrius. Now, so who was in No Name? Who I know. I hear different things. Who was in that group?
Let's see. So Juan Sains was the producer of No Name. That was Greg Polito's cousin, who's in Texas now and produces a lot of great Latin artists there. But the main players in No Name are Sean Shagag, if you recall Sean Shagag. And, memory escapes me, but it was like a whole group of them. I'll tell you. But Sean Shagag was the one on the lyrics, and he was really the visionary behind the group. And then Juan was the musician. So he would put the music together. And as the producer, I came up with the sounds that we were going to use for the track. So that's what that's the magic behind production. You've got your producer with the sounds, you've got your musician for the actual notes, and you've got your writer or your lyricist for the vocals.
Okay. And how'd you with Hitman? How'd you guys hook up? You and Mike Hitman Wilson.
Gosh, I've known Hitman so long, and just through DJing, and I believe our first introduction might have been through Tony Batoy.
Okay.
And from DJing at the Rainbow back in the days, and Mike, as they call it now, was the resident DJ for Rainbow and for all of Tony Batoy's parties. So I would see him out there DJing. This is way before we did music. We were just DJing. And then, the music scene came along, and then I was producing tracks, and he started doing remixes and that. And I just recall inviting him over when I was doing the Love I Lost. And he hadn't hit it big yet. He was just about to hit it big. And I hope that, his collaboration on Love I Lost helped him catapult to that, because he went on to do amazing things. But like Love I Lost, I think when I first had him come out and help me, I said, "Hey, help me do the mix on this." And he did the Hitman mix of the Love I Lost, which was the most popular version played in the clubs. And but at that time, he hadn't done all the legendary stuff yet. So I was super excited and happy to have him first, if you will.
Yeah.
He literally was in the basement with me cutting tape up, and we were editing that stuff and remixing Love I Lost. And then after that, he hit it big with remixes for Inner City and I mean, you name it. And it was so cool because I got to tag along. He'd call me and say, "Hey, I'm going to see Kevin Saunderson in Detroit. You want to come?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's go. Pick me up." He'd pick me up. We go fly out to Detroit and go hang out with Kevin Saunderson. So I got to meet Reese and Santonio and hang out with them, and that quickly became some of my favorite tracks, like you mentioned, that I played at the parties.
That you wouldn't give me, but that's okay.
Yeah, and it was awesome. I remember buying my first Yamaha keyboard, that little DX100, I think it was.
Oh, I remember that.
That was the Detroit sound. That was that inner city Kevin Saunderson sound.
Wow.
When I was in Detroit, he showed me. I'm like, that thing? That was it? I mean, it was like about this size. It was like this, you know?
Right.
I'm like, that thing is the legendary sound of Detroit. Where can I buy this thing?
Right.
So he took me, literally, Kevin drove me and Mike to, on 8 Mile or whatever the road is there, to a music shop where he buys all of his equipment, right? And they show me this DX100, and I'm like, okay, I'll take it. Bought it right on the spot, and just to take it home and mess with it, But I was like, I had to have the sound of Detroit and start to play with that. But yeah, that was me and Hitman, man. Amazing times, great times, in the studio producing with them, and it's just been a blast.
Wow, man. Well, like I said, bro, I told Mike we were proud of him for being from Aurora. We were proud of you also, like I said, coming from Downers Grove, being a suburban guy, somebody from the Dilligaff scene, that kind of brought our essence to everything, and I think you and Mike got us some respect out here. And then, I got to DJ a lot of places, Chicago, because people, oh, you're from where Hitman's from and blah, blah, blah. And people got to know us. And like I said, we would see, I always wonder how we always knew where everybody was at, though. We had no cell phones. And somebody, how did we?
How the hell do we know where to go?
And we always end up either at Denny's or Perkins or something at the end of the night. I'm like, how the hell do we know? Like, it was amazing. I was talking to Quick Mix Mike and George Scott, who did some of the parties at the Blue Moon, and we were like, how the hell do we always end up? And no matter where we were all DJing at, somehow, from Bolingbrook to Aurora to Elgin, we'd always end up at some Denny's somewhere at 2:30 in the morning, talking about the mixes that we did and the people that we saw, the girls that we saw particularly.
Somehow we knew where to get the flyers out to, and we knew who's having a party so we can get the flyers and we could snipe their parking lot or whatever it might be. But yeah, we always managed to run into each other, and we knew. And let's face it, when you throw a party out in the burbs, it wasn't like crowded, so you didn't have so many to choose from. So you'd know, oh, I'm going to Richard's party. Oh, I'm going to Mark's party. So like we kind of just knew, sequentially which parties we were going to. That's what we counted on. We didn't need all the social media that we had today.
Wow.
But yeah, we just happened to know where everybody's party was.
Wow.
And that's crazy. Just it reminds me, I remember being at one of your parties in Aurora spinning, and I get a phone call, and it was probably a page on my beeper or something at the time, right? And somebody was telling me, hey, you know what? Are you at Dilligaff's? Because Derek Carter is here singing The Love I Lost.
Oh, God.
Do you remember that?
Yes, yes, I do.
Derek Carter, amazing guy. Love Derek. He was a singer before he was a DJ.
I know. When he was working at Gramophone.
Yeah.
And he was saying.
Yeah. And I remember I was like, what? So, I'm not the type of person like to take issue with any of that. I'm like, it's a compliment to me.
Right.
I was complimented. So I went up to Dilligaff's and I met Derek, and I'm like, dude, that's awesome, man. I love your rendition of Love I Lost. You want to come out on the road with me? And so that's how I met Derek Carter.
Wow.
He was like, I don't know. I guess he was singing Love I Lost because he said it was his favorite song. So he was out performing it at different clubs. And I was in Aurora. I remember when I got that page from somebody at Dilligaff's telling me that he was there. And so then when I met him, I invited him in and I said, hey, man, let's go do these shows. And in fact, when I was WJLB in Detroit, flew me out to Detroit to perform Love I Lost at one of their clubs, at their radio show parties. And I remember getting off the plane and I invited Derek Carter. I said, Derek, you're on with me, man. Let's get on stage. Let's sing this thing. So
Wow.
I was putting him in front and center in my shows. And this is long before he DJ'd. How about that?
I remember that. See, that's why Mark was much more successful than I was as a DJ. Because see, like I said, I would have went the whole different direction with that. You had made friends. I'd have showed up like, "What are you doing?" You know,
You
but
battled.
yeah, I battled. I had a whole battle mentality. I didn't get out of that till probably by the time it was over. I finally got over it. You know, because again, and let me be clear about it. I was a break dancer, so you know, everything was. I'm going to battle this guy. We're going to break against each other. We're going to DJ against each other. If you weren't part of my squad, we're battling them. You know, so it took me a minute to get back. I was a kid. You know, Benji's the one that kind of slowed me down. I was like, you don't got to battle everybody. You can be
I'll tell
friends.
you though, like you never know what the evolution's going to be, because I so applaud and look up to Derek for what he's accomplished.
Yeah,
beyond that.
He's done a lot.
Like
he has done a lot.
I remember doing teen nights at Doc Weed's.
Oh, I remember
in Lombard in the Yorktown Mall parking lot.
Yes,
we were doing
yes.
teen nights, and I would have Derek. Like we were just already, you know, singing "Love I Lost," performing it at all these little clubs, and then you know, we're throwing parties, and he's like, "Hey, let me DJ." And this is when he just started DJing, and I'm like, "Sure, man, come on in." So like he did his first DJ gigs, if he recalls, at like Doc Weed's.
I remember that.
You know,
I got to give it to you, Mark. You let us spin a lot because I spun at Doc Weed's a couple times. There was Sunday night parties. I remember I had finals due, and this was my senior year in high school. And we were sitting there, we were writing, we were getting like, I said, well, I got to go DJ at Doc Weed's. Let's just go. And we left and we went and we spun. You know, I like I said, that's just your personality. There are different sets that you would just invite us to and let us DJ. And that helped get our brand out there. And I appreciate that because there were places that I think you had this DJ at Doc Weed's one time. I went out there, DJ'd a couple times. I believe, I don't know if it was 1-2-3 Club, ABC Club. I can't remember. Somewhere in Chicago. You were doing, oh, no. I remember now. You were doing a set at the, what's the name of that place? I was over there in Milwaukee. I forget. It come back to me, but it was a hall.
Centrum.
The Centrum. And you had me come out there. You had me come out there and spin, and it made me look so cool. I just started dating this girl from Romeoville, right? and I said, hey, yeah, I'm going to Chicago. I'm going to go DJ. Mark Imperial's having me out DJ at the Centrum. And she was like, really? I'm like, yeah, seriously. She didn't believe me. I introduced you to her when I brought her out there. Say, this is Mark. She was all shocked. You made me look real good that day. That's all I can say. I came in with Crater Records. You know, I'm like, I'm going to DJ. Oh, this is Mark Imperial.
Hey, that was our chief aim, man. That was our chief aim.
Girls.
Always look good. Yeah.
Yep. So, man, man, I remember that, man. You, like I said, you opened doors for a lot of us out here. You guys from Bolingbrook, guys from Aurora. And I appreciate that, man. You know, because a lot of people, you know how people can be.
I wish more people were like that. That was my biggest gripe back in the days. Like it was like everybody was like crabs in a bucket, man. They're just trying to pull you back down. And it's like, I didn't understand, because at the end of the day, come on, man. We all share a fan. We all share a customer. And I used to try to point out, I'm like, why do you think like hip hop was successful and house music struggled? It's because everybody there is trying to raise each other up. They know they share an audience, so why not guest on this person's record and expose your talent to their fan base and vice versa? Because we all share a customer. But at the end of the day, when everybody is trying to be protective and not, it just keeps everybody down.
Yeah, it hurt us. It hurt the city. It hurt Chicago. And I think that's why, you know, we went with the rave. You know, I remember when I started hearing the music change, like when Get Down, everybody came out, you know, it was kind of changing. And like I said, a lot of people went to New York. DJ Pierre went to New York. Lil Lewis went to New York. A few people went overseas. And I remember going to the Red Zone in New York and realizing, oh yeah, they got this now. They got the ball. And like with Masters at Work and those guys in New York and Todd Terry and all of them, they were able to take it to another level. You know, they kept the ball moving. You know, so it was bittersweet. You know, because I knew we had so much opportunity here. I think that there were some bad choices made in regard to which records that got pushed on a national level. I always say, people say records I feel that should have been national is If You Only Knew by Chip E. Ralphie's song Used to Hold Me, of course. Fantasy Girl by Pierre, and The Love I Lost. Those would be the 4 songs I think could have just those should have been pop hits, in my opinion. They were just structured the right way. But Kevin went on to do some things. And I think because Kevin had sung stuff before for Farley and for he did House Ain't Giving Up, and I think he worked with MK2 with Don't Stop the Music and stuff like that. And then he went on, and of course he did If You Only Knew, So when he went on, I think he went on to Club Nouveau. For a while, and he did that, so he did pretty well. I know, rest in peace, he had passed away, obviously, but we had some pretty good vocalists back then. We had Robert Owens, we had Xavier Gold, Liz Torres, Keith Nunnally, Daryl Pandy, of course, and Robert Owens, of course, and then Kevin. Kevin had the voice of House of Chicago. You listen to his songs, that was Chicago. So so.
Really amazing talent.
And who else was going to ask you about? Now, we talked about Ralphie a bit. All right. Now, Ralphie to me is probably one of the smoothest DJs I've ever seen. And Ralphie, I brought Ralphie out the most. That was the guy I hung out with the most out of Hot Mix 5 guys, except for Julian, of course. And me and Ralphie got pretty cool. He was always a straight up real guy, pretty mellow, always pretty mellow. But man, that dude can mix. He can mix. And his records, I mean, the dude is a great producer. When he did Used to Hold Me, and then remember when he did the song I Want Your Love with the sax. I mean, that dude was good, man. How was it working with him when you did Jadore?
Oh, tremendous. Because Ralphie, of all the Hot Mix 5 guys, I mean, the style that I really was drawn to was Ralphie's style, because he played a lot of the tribal tracks. He played a lot of the imports, stuff we loved. I mean, Julian was edgy too, really drawn to that style. But Ralphie was the perfect producing partner for Jadore, because I just knew musically what drove him. And then when I played the track for him the first time, it just clicked. He's like, wow, this is the track. So it started with a big mess of drum machine programming I did in the bedroom, and then he got to hear it, and he's like, wow, listen to that 727 percussion, and then take it to the studio. And it was tremendous. I believe Ralphie introduced me to Dane Roe Wade, who had the studio that we worked on that track with. And then before we took it to the 24 track studio, we did the pre-production at Dane Roe Wade's studio. And they got my vision instantly. We clicked musically because we had the same influences: Bobby O, Italo disco, the tribal tracks. So it was an amazing experience.
But we thought, like I told you before, we thought that was an import. I was telling Tyree when I Know UFOs came out from Detroit, I thought it was an import. Mind Games, we thought was an import. And we were prepared to spend the $8.99, $7.99, $3.99. And Jadore Dancer was like, okay, we gotta go get this record. So we get on the train, we go down to imports, and we see Stacy, and we're trying to sing the song, of course. We're messing it up. And because we had heard it that weekend on the radio, Ralphie probably was playing it. And we're like, yeah, we're looking for this song. And then the guys go, "A la toi," we're trying to sing it, embarrassing the hell out of ourselves. And he pulls out DJ International. I'm like, what? This is not an import? I said, who's Mark Imperial? Okay, so man, it's still a smooth record, man. It was just, it did capture that essence of Italo disco, but it was still house though. You had that Chicago feel, but it had that feel, man. And so like I said, nothing that I've heard you make was produced wrong. It was all produced very good, man.
I appreciate it. And I know it was weird too, because it probably was like one of the, how many Chicago records had a Italo sound, So it wasn't even really intentional. I was just like, that's just what I was drawn to make at the time.
But, I think that captured essence, because out here, we played the hell of it out here, because again, Italo's had such an influence out in the suburbs because of Julian and Ralphie and the guys coming out to the parties and DJing at Main Street, DJing at Dilla Gaff's. So again, we had a crowd that still resonated. We could still play Angel Eyes. We could still play Love and Music. We could still play Feel the Drive in some cases, So, and I don't care if the crowd was black, white, or whatever, everybody knew these songs. So it wasn't like, oh, this is a white crowd, I got to play Italo. No, we all liked it. Black, white, Asian, Latino, whatever. Everybody liked Klein and B.O. theme. Everybody liked Love It music. We knew that those are the staples. That's how we got down out here. And then we would play Chicago stuff, and we play, stuff that came from Baltimore, whatever. If it was good, we played it. That's pretty much was our rule. Is it good? Will people dance? Yes, play it,
And here was a real weird experience. After I did J'adore, I don't know if it was like a year after or 2 years after, the weirdest thing happened. One of the records that I was influenced by, Italo-wise and import-wise, was Doctor's Cat, Feel the Drive, right? And I don't know if you could still find this, probably, if you YouTube it or something, but you'll find like J'adore with Doctor's Cat. They literally bootleg my track. They took the J'adore drums and they put the lyrics to "You must feel the drive."
Yeah, I'm gonna look for it.
Yeah, and I was hearing this, and I'm like, if that's not the biggest compliment I've ever had in my life, like, here's me, a little kid, like 14 years old, playing "Feel the Drive" in my bedroom forever, and then next thing you know, they're stealing my music.
But that is a compliment, man.
That's crazy, right?
But that just goes to show how good that production was, man. Those cats in Italy, they weren't playing, man, when they were making that stuff. It was very well produced, very, very well produced and very well played.
That's when we really realized how small the world is. I mean, it didn't feel that way back then without the social media and stuff.
No.
Like, it was like, what? These people in Europe are using my beats and putting their lyrics on them? This is so weird.
I know.
Now it's like, oh, they probably heard it, on Facebook or something. Like, dude, it's such a small world now, but back then?
It was amazing back then when I miss, I got the record box and Serato and stuff. I miss when we would pull those records out and we would read the labels and we would see where they were from, New York or Italy or Germany or Japan. It was like the world was so big to us. We were kids, 13, 14-year-olds playing these records. And like I was told, Man Parrish, when I first talked to Man Parrish, it took everything in me not to freak out. Because I used to break dance to his songs. I used to play his songs. And when I told him, I said, Man Parrish, I said, when we would take Boogie Down Bronx Hip Hop Bebop and I would look at it on Sugar Scoop or Rams Horn, whatever, I said, I always imagine like you and Arthur Baker and Africa Bambaataa sitting in some high, building in New York, overlooking everything as the music gods. And he's like, no, we're just in my bedroom making music. So it made me realize, people were doing what we were doing. We were doing what they were doing. But it's just that, no social media. I think it kept a little mystery to everything. It made it seem more grand,
Yeah, for sure.
So. Well, anyway, Mark, I don't want to keep you too much longer. I appreciate you coming on and talking and putting it down. I've been doing these shows in order to establish, what all happened, not just one narrative, just kind of like as a fan of you guys, I think it's better for me, not that anybody else couldn't do it, but I wasn't making tracks with you guys at that time. I wasn't putting out records. I don't have a dog in the fight to say my record created house music or my club did it or my record label or me as a DJ. I observed it all happen. And I appreciate the fact that guys that inspired me and guys that like you and Hitman and Tyree, coming on and giving your voice, because I think a lot of times your voice is overlooked when I see these house documentaries made by different people, different places. They seem to they miss a lot because they focus on one narrative. And this is not to disrespect anybody, because I think, like you said, I think everybody helped build this house, for lack of a better analogy. But I'm glad you got to speak, because a lot of times we don't understand what the suburbs did, and you and Hitman and a few other people out here. You guys really contributed to the foundations of house music. I don't know, you're a humble guy, so you probably won't say it, but I'll say it. You really contributed to the foundations of house music, and you caused a shift when you made Jason's Revenge, and when you made Jadore Dancer, and then you made a staple, a Chicago staple, The Love or Lost. That's a lot to contribute, man. I mean, that is a lot of contribution, and of course, all the people that work with you to make those things. But that's the type of stuff that needs to be said. People need to know that part of the story, because that's the part of the story that gets overlooked quite a bit. So I appreciate you telling it.
Hey, Richard, I appreciate you, and I appreciate this whole conversation and bringing back a lot of great memories. And And yeah, I mean, I hope if anybody, takes anything away from it, or I love hearing when people heard the love I lost when they fell in love or got married, or it was the song of the summer for when they fell in love or something. That's always really cool. That's more gratifying to me than anything else. So I certainly appreciate it. And it's almost like I didn't think I was changing the world. I just thought I was having fun, and doing our thing and putting out our sound. So I definitely appreciate the kind words, Richard. And yeah, like you said, everyone's is a creator. The documentaries out there, I love watching them because you're right. It is a perspective. They're all kinds of perspectives. So you're just hearing a different perspective now, So not that they omitted it or left it out. That wasn't their reality.
It wasn't their reality. It wasn't their focus. And like I said, me being a young DJ, going to buy those records, listening to the BMX, listening to the Hot Mix 5 of BMX, going to the Rainbow, going out south to Sawyer's, going out to Mendel. Because I got to go to those parties, I got to go to a lot of clubs because of knowing Farley or knowing Julie and places I normally wouldn't have got into. And I got to see a lot of things, and I got a broad view of things from here. So I don't think a lot of times people are speaking from where they're coming from. I don't, like I said, you're right, they're probably not purposely omitting, but I don't think they were aware, and I like making people aware. There was a lot going on, a lot of moving parts in that particular machine, and it all worked, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we would have went a lot further if people had adapted that to we can all bring each other up and do this, as opposed to, well, I don't want this guy to get ahead of me, or I don't want this guy to be at this party. I think that we did ourselves some damage with that. But, here we are now, 30 years later, house music is resurging in the way, and the stuff that's coming out from overseas, from Germany and from South Africa, from Portugal, and then down in South America, it's all, and even in Chicago, guys in Chicago are still making some good stuff, like Maurice Joshua and Ola and who else? It's so many I can't remember, but I know Maurice, I recently bought his stuff, so we still got some bangers coming from Chicago, but I think that we influence dance music across the world with how the structure of how we did things, I think, kind of set up dance music in general, regardless of what type we're talking about, because of the foundational work we did in Chicago.
And I think the new generations are learning from, what we built, and they're just making it better and doing better business as a result. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a lot easier now. They don't have to run around trying to find labels. They got Beatport and they got Track Source. They got ways to get the music out and heard. We had, I remember one time, this is my last story, but I came over to your house a couple times. My friend Jeremiah, and you were like, yeah, come on over. We come over. You had your stuff in the basement. We come in. And I'd be like, oh my God, I was at Mark Imperial's house. And nobody believed me. I'll go back to work. I was at Mark Imperial's house on Sunday. No, you weren't. Yes, I was. How could you possibly? That's how famous you were to everybody. I'm like, I was there, but like I said, I remember I come over to play. So, hey, I made this. What you think? Oh, that's cool. So I would take it over to DJ, and like I said, I appreciate you, man. You were always a straight up guy, man, and that says a lot, because you had every reason to have the biggest ego, but you didn't. What I'm saying? You made one of the biggest hits in Chicago history, and you didn't have an ego about it. You were still you, and I respect that, man.
Well, thanks, Richard. I appreciate you.
All right, brother. Did you want anything finally say? Anything you're doing that you want people to be aware of now?
Hey, you know what? We're going to be working on some music. I still do it for fun, and it's been on my list to just do some more tracks now from the just from the heart, things that I want to hear out in the clubs, and got some colleagues overseas that'll give it some play in the UK. So you never know. We might have some music coming out pretty soon.
All right, man. Well, when you do, I'd love to have you back on. And I appreciate you again, brother. Like I said, I keep sending you messages. So there's some stuff I'm doing that, well, I'll talk to you about it later. I don't want to get ahead of things. But there's some stuff I'm doing, I think, that I'm looking forward to doing. And then when we get to that point, I'll definitely let you know, because I want you to be involved, even if it's just coming and checking it out when we get to that point, bro. All right?
Hey, looking forward to it anytime, Richard.
All right. So I'm about to go ahead on my little phone. One of these days, I'm going to execute a studio. But thanks, Mark, for coming on And you take it easy, brother. Stay in touch. And, once again, praying for everybody that, we all stay healthy, and looking forward to talking to you again, brother.
Thanks so much, Richard. Take care, everybody. Take care.